Hey there, and welcome to this presentation of how to segment in Salesforce Marketing Cloud without SQL queries. My name is Anthony, I'm the CEO of DESelect, and welcome to the presentation. Well, as you may have heard, Marketing Cloud now actually ranks #1 in marketing applications based on the IDC report on global market share. Now, we think this is because Marketing Cloud has just these very extensive capabilities, and it also offers great flexibility. For instance, it has a very open way of defining your own data model. However, with that great flexibility, there is a great responsibility. And to manage data in Marketing Cloud, many customers end up writing SQL queries just to operate their Marketing Cloud. Now, we actually learned at DESelect how organizations can save an average of 50% of the time they would normally spend on data in Marketing Cloud. And we also learned how they can do this while enabling their marketers so they can segment, target, and personalize independently and much more creatively. All of these things really drive campaign ROI, and that's why it's so important, and that's why we're doing this presentation. Here's the thing, you can achieve the same by leveraging intuitive drag and drop segmentation, which is fully integrated with your Marketing Cloud. I'm going to give you a few examples of customers who've actually done this, who've got these great results doing that. For instance, Cambridge University Press, one of the largest university presses in the world, they were able to save over 50% of the time that they used to spend on data, and they got completely independent of SQL queries. Essentially, they had a lot of different back-end systems that they would integrate with their Marketing Cloud. In fact, they had an internal data manager who would spend about 50% of their time just merging files on a weekly basis, doing some data cleansing, data formatting, writing queries in Marketing Cloud to merge the data together, and just a lot of manual work there. And at the same time, in parallel, her marketing colleagues could not independently segment for their campaign, so they were very dependent on her, as well as on other technical experts that had to come in and support them. So once they made a switch to DESelect, the data manager found out that she only had to spend 10% of her time anymore on managing data. So it's a huge reduction from the 50% to the 10% time spent. I actually really love these guys because they actually put a clock on how long it would take them to use DESelect to create a query that in the past would take them an hour, and they found out it was 4 minutes and 20 seconds. So over time, the marketers became very independent to do segmentation and to prepare their data sets for campaigns and whatnot, to the point that now they actually even have junior marketers, even graduates, capable of doing those things. Overall achievements is that they saved over 50% of the time that they used to spend on data, and they're no longer dependent on SQL. Let's look at one other. This is PLI, Practicing Law Institute, a huge education platform for lawyers in the US. And what happened there was that they were still implementing Marketing Cloud. And as they went along, they realized oh, wait, we're going to need SQL queries to, run our campaigns essentially. So they started to plan for training for their marketers in SQL, which was received, as you may guess, with some mixed response. At the same time, they still also assumed that for the more complex queries, they were still going to have to rely on their data analytics team. So there would be some internal dependence, there would be some communication overhead. But then they found DESelect essentially, and in a matter of just 3 weeks, they signed up. They canceled all their SQL training that they had planned for, so they saved significant cost there, and they saw a great Marketing Cloud adoption afterwards. Right now, DESelect is essentially a part of their standard way of doing campaigns. In fact, the graph at the top shows the number of selections they made over time using DESelect. We'll go into what a selection is later on, but you can see that that's a pretty good graph. And on top of that, they also found out they were actually not dependent on their data analytics colleagues, because for the segmentation they are able to fully rely on DESelect. So overall results, really great adoption of Marketing Cloud and significant cost saved. So our customers tend to be very happy with us. So we've got some great reviews for which we're very grateful on G2, as well as the Salesforce App Exchange, where we are listed. So if you are so inclined, I would encourage you to have a look, check out the reviews. We've also been very fortunate to have been able to work together with some great customers known internationally, as well as very solid partners in different regions of the world. So who is this for? Well, this presentation and DESelect is for Marketing Cloud users who want to work very efficiently and who want a great user experience of Marketing Cloud. So this is for you if you feel you should be getting more out of Marketing Cloud and you want to segment, personalize, and query just much more easily in Marketing Cloud. At the same time, you may want to build a very efficient marketing automation team within the organization to support marketers in perhaps different product lines, perhaps different regions or even countries. Or you may want to seek to scale a campaign factory. Some larger enterprises, they will work with a centralized team to just execute campaigns. Again, this is where we can definitely help. Overall, you may want to become less dependent or not dependent at all on SQL queries and technical expertise just to prepare the data. If this sounds like you, then stick around. There's a few alternatives out there. You may have tried some of these. You may have tried and unfortunately failed because, for instance, there's a standard filter option in Marketing Cloud. Sometimes that's sufficient, but usually it's way too limited. There's also a feature called Salesforce CRM Reports. So if you have something like Service Cloud connected to Marketing Cloud, you might try to use that, but essentially these are reports in the end, so they're not meant for segmentation. Or you may be doing SQL queries, which we've already referred to as very technical, very slow, time intensive, even if you know how to write SQL, by the way. And lastly, quote-unquote audience management solutions. There's a few of those out there, but what they have in common is they tend to be super expensive. Just to get started with them, you'll have to invest time in the implementation, and in the end, we find with talking with customers that they have these kind of solutions, and it still doesn't satisfy the requirements, and that's when we still come in. So we'll cover that in more detail further down, but here's the truth. Managing data in Marketing Cloud is actually easy. It doesn't have to be like all those things I just mentioned. It can actually be easy when you have an intuitive and fully integrated segmentation solution. So that intuitive part and that fully integrated part is something we'll cover a bit more extensively in this presentation. Quick background story. How did we come up with DESelect? Well, we have been around CRM and marketing automation since 2012, when we first got familiarized with the Salesforce ecosystem. But the problem of segmentation kept recurring during projects where we would be doing Marketing Cloud. So eventually, I came up with the idea of a segmentation solution for Marketing Cloud, and I pitched this idea to my current client and some other clients from the past. The first reaction I got from my client was, "You're going to score big time with this." So that was very encouraging, and with that feedback, we went on to another customer just to check, like, okay, maybe it's a fluke, right? Maybe just one person that wants this. But the second customer essentially just said, "Well, can I get a quote?" Mind you, at this point, we hadn't even written a single line of code yet. So, we took that as a sign that we should probably start doing something about this. So I got together with my long-term friend and business partner, Jonathan, and we began building. We quickly saw some traction amongst customers, including the ones that gave us that feedback early on. We also saw traction amongst Salesforce partners, whether there be consulting firms or agencies, the so-called SIs, system integrators of Salesforce, because they recognize the problem, because they see this every day on their projects, right? Ultimately, this led to us announcing our partnership with Salesforce, and we are now also available on the App Exchange. Who are we? So just a quick background of the management team behind our company. Both Jonathan and me have worked with great brands over the years, from great consulting firms. We've founded companies before, so this is just a quick background on us. So let's get back to our headline. How do you actually segment in Marketing Cloud without SQL queries? Well, I've alluded to this before, but you need to prepare audiences efficiently for campaigns. And to do that, you need a segmentation solution that offers intuitive drag and drop. It's really important that it is so easy that basically anyone can do it with maybe a little bit minimal training, essentially. And also, and this was a intentional design decision. We felt that the solution should be available inside of Marketing Cloud, which is where the marketers are doing most of their work anyway, right? So that just makes sense. Now, we learned how big of an impact this has based on 2 key insights. So insight number 1, 50% of the time that you're spending on data can probably be automated. Now, that sounds like a bold statement, but what we found by surveying VPs of marketing, marketing directors, people who lead marketing automation teams, is that, and that's displayed here in the upper bar, that they would be spending about, on average, across their team, 40% of their time on data. Now, when I say spending 40% of their time on data, I mean that in the wide sense. Think of things like writing SQL queries, but also just creating data extensions, applying filters, maybe doing data cleansing still in your Excel sheet. And don't forget communication overhead. Having to brief someone who is data savvy enough to provide you with the right data set, but I'll get into more detail on that in a second. Anyway, we found that through careful analysis and doing actual projects with customers, we could halve this time by automating many of these manual, boring tasks. And so that leads to a big reduction in the time that it takes to actually go live with a campaign. So it actually can reduce your campaign lead time, which in a world where speed is so important and you want to have an agile organization, this is key. Also, on this campaign lead time and the communication overhead I referred to earlier, what typically tends to happen is that maybe as a marketer, you want to do a certain campaign. So you start asking your colleagues about what data to prepare and eventually find out you need someone more technical to write a query or whatnot. What happens then is what we call targeting ping-pong, where you give your requirements, you get some feedback, and there's usually a lot of back and forth. And this is just majorly inefficient, first off, but it also really increases the time for you to be able to go live with your campaign while that deadline for your campaign go-live date is still coming closer. So it's a very stressful thing. And this is something that is unnecessary if essentially you're able to do this yourself as a marketer, right? So, insight number 2, you can actually have a full integration without a heavy implementation. So let me elaborate on that. When I say the word integrated, most customers immediately think of, okay, we're going to have to do a heavy project where we do some kind of specs, we do some kind of analysis, design, we have to set up an architecture. But here's the thing, it is possible to actually have a fully integrated segmentation solution without a heavy implementation project first, which also not only costs money and in setup and fees, but also the time of your own resources. Be very mindful of that. But secondly, even when you have these heavy implementations done, there will be maintenance afterwards. If there's like a lot of custom stuff built, essentially whenever you have a new field or a new table that you would want to sync over from Marketing Cloud to your segmentation solution, you're going to have to call in the troops again to update that. But you can avoid that. You can avoid the heavy implementation and the maintenance, provided that your solution actually offers what we call plug and play integration. So this is something we purposefully did at DESelect. We designed it as what is known as an installed package in Marketing Cloud. And what that means is that we install DESelect for our customers. And that's a very heavy process that only takes us about 30 minutes. So essentially, once DESelect is installed, customers can immediately leverage all their data within the solution and use all the features. There is no implementation, you see. On top of that, that's the implementation part. But what about the maintenance? Okay, what if your data changes over time? That's perfectly fine. DESelect actually constantly checks for new available data in Marketing Cloud. May that be data extensions or even data views. We can also completely get that data for you. So even as your data model evolves, which I guarantee you it will, you will be able to immediately leverage your new data and without having to do some kind of maintenance or do any changes. So to summarize, you can save 50% of the time that you would normally spend on data and also significantly decrease campaign lead time. And at the same time, you can avoid a heavy implementation followed by what are often hidden maintenance costs. All you have to do for that is switch to a drag and drop segmentation solution that comes with a plug and play integration. All right, so that's the two key insights that we found on our projects, and that again helped us design DESelect. Now, I want to quickly pause here and have a look at some of the other alternatives in a bit more detail. So for instance, I mentioned filters before. So these are a standard feature in Marketing Cloud. However, there's two issues. Filters offer very limited segmentation. Secondly, they don't even allow you to reliably filter across different data extensions. Whereas in DESelect, you can join together as many tables as you like and have really extensive filtering options on top of those. Some like to use CRM Reports. So this is a feature in Salesforce CRM. So assuming you have that and it's connected to Marketing Cloud, you could try to do this, but Salesforce Reports are actually meant for reporting. Who would have guessed? So as such, they actually offer only very limited segmentation functionality. They also only let you segment based on CRM data and not data that may only be stored in Marketing Cloud, such as data views, which contain all the behavioral data on your customers, which, by the way, is very interesting to segment on. This approach also forces you to pay additional licenses because now your marketers have to use both the Marketing Cloud and the CRM. So overall, this results in a very clunky process because as a user, you also need to switch between two platforms essentially. They're both called Salesforce, but it's separate logins, it's separate environments. It's Marketing Cloud and whatever you're using for your CRM. Instead, with DESelect, marketers can just easily segment directly in Marketing Cloud, which we felt makes a lot more sense. Okay, and then there's SQL queries. Now, even if you know SQL queries, it's a hassle to write it. I know, because I used to do that at some point. It's just a very costly way of allocating resources, and the resources who are capable of writing SQL in Marketing Cloud are rare, and there's a good chance you may be able to use them for something more value-adding than writing queries. Also, this approach will just leave you dependent on the technical expertise, and actually that's not something either the technical expert or the marketer really wants. It's not efficient at all, because as mentioned before, this leads to communication overhead. So instead, with DESelect, segmentation becomes so easy that even junior marketers can do it in a matter of minutes. Lastly, audience management solutions. So this is a bit of a broader category where there's different solutions in the market. And essentially the way they work is you have to connect them to Marketing Cloud and do an integration there. However, this comes with a very high implementation cost. It's not atypical to hear quotes ranging from, just for the implementation, mind you, between 40K till way over 100K. It may also come with additional license costs just for the solution itself. And it will make you dependent on experts to implement this solution and also to make modifications later on. And that later on part is something people don't realize when they get started down this road. This is really a hidden cost, a hidden maintenance cost. Lastly, and this is a bit more technical and functional, but actually when you have this kind of setup, what typically happens is that your data from Marketing Cloud will sync on a daily basis with a daily batch to your audience management solution. What this means is that you will always be using data that is slightly outdated. So that's not always, sometimes that's okay, often it's not. So instead, DESelect is plug and play. As mentioned, there's no big implementation. There's no maintenance afterwards for making a new data available in DESelect, because it does that automatically. And also, there's not this daily batch thing that I just explained. DESelect can use all the data that is in Marketing Cloud right now. So that's more on the comparison with other solutions, but how will you benefit? What will be your business results? Well, based on the success that we've had with our customers, we can tell you that these are the kind of results you should be looking for. You should be able to save an estimated 50% of the time that you currently spend on data in Marketing Cloud. Consequently, your campaign cycles, your campaign lead time, however you want to call it, will be reduced with at least 20%. I say at least because you also get rid of the communication overhead and the waiting times. Don't forget about that. You will be able to deliver more high quality campaigns because you will be able to target much more targeted, right? And this is something we often hear from customers, that with their current setup, they don't pursue the most targeted campaigns that they might, just because they know it's going to be too much work. And once I switch to DESelect, they are able to do the more targeted campaigns as well as more personalized campaigns, because that's also something that we support. You won't have to rely on experts to write SQL queries or anything else. You won't have to worry about hidden costs. We are very upfront about our fees, and there's no additional maintenance afterwards, as explained. You will definitely note improved user adoption. SQL is one of the things that people like the least about Marketing Cloud. It's a great platform, but SQL is simply something people are not prepared for when they start with it. So I can guarantee you they will have a much, much better user experience. And you will be able to start doing all of this virtually immediately thanks to our plug and play integration. So just click install and you're good to go. So put differently, you will be able to make the most of Marketing Cloud and increase campaign ROI. So that's what it's all about. Okay, good. So in this section, I want to show you some of our key features, and I think you're going to love this. I have to say in advance, I won't be able to show you everything because we do offer very extensive segmentation capabilities. So if you want to learn more about that, check out the website, or even better, just reach out to us for a demo. So let's jump into it. I'm going to switch here to our own Marketing Cloud environment. And of course, it's hard to give a demo about segmentation without first making a stop by the data that we're going to use. In this little demo, I will just use a very common data model, which is accounts, contacts, opportunities. Something that those who use Salesforce Sales Cloud and have it connected to Marketing Cloud will be very familiar with. But you can think of opportunities, if you don't have that, you can think of opportunities as something like orders, for instance, or purchases. I'm just going to show one real quick to give you an idea what's in there. So in the opportunities DE, we have, it's a very simple table where every opportunity has its own unique identifier, and it's linked to an account with an identifier. And this will be important for later on. And then there's some other information such as the stage when, is this opportunity closed, lost, won, or still open. Now, let's say for a moment we want to do a campaign where we want to combine the information of opportunities linked to the contacts they are related to. In my data model here, I'm going to have to combine opportunities with accounts, because that's the in-between, with contacts. So in the past, to combine these three data extensions, I would have to write a SQL query typically. That is, of course, unless we have DESelect. And as you can see, I can navigate to DESelect just straight from within Marketing Cloud, hover over App Exchange, and click DESelect. And so now that we have gotten here, you can see an overview of different selections that have been created. So selections is a new concept that we introduce into Marketing Cloud. You can think of it as a query, as a set of rules, as a segment. And you can see some of the selections that my colleagues and I have made before. You can see if they've already run successfully under the status column, how many records they produced, when they were done, and so on. Very useful here is the fact that you can copy these things. So especially in larger organizations, Perhaps someone who's a marketing automation specialist or who's more data savvy can create templates, and then the other colleagues can copy that and use it for their own selections. And as you can see, you can also group these things in folders and so on. Now, let's say I want to create a new selection. And once that's loaded, I'm going to take you through 3 distinct steps. First, we'll look at selection criteria, where we define the data sources we want to use, as well as apply filters. Secondly, we'll define our target data extension. So this is going to be a data extension immediately available in Marketing Cloud that we can use for a campaign. And lastly, we can have a preview so we can iterate our way to the right segment. So I'm going to simply call this contacts with open opportunities, because that's the campaign I would like to do. And let's start with selection criteria. On the left-hand side, you can see a section called Available Data Extensions. And actually, if you scroll through it, this gives me a list of all the data extensions that I have available in this BU, and I can use all of those. And this is exactly the thing that will refresh automatically over time. So even if you add new data extensions by importing, by integrating, by adding a new object from Salesforce CRM, for instance, it will be available here. And on top of that, it even has data view. So if I search for underscore, here they are, clicks, journeys, journey activity, very, very useful behavioral information to query on. But I'm not going to do that right now. I'm simply going to stick to the demo data that I showed you guys earlier. And so let's start with accounts. To use the accounts DE for my selection, I simply have to drag and drop it to the right-hand side. And once I do that, I can provide an alias. So in case you have very long data extension names, or maybe are using synchronized DEs, you can rename that just to give it, make it a little bit easier to read as you go through the process. So I'm going to call this accounts. There we go. And I'm going to save that. Now, the moment I do that, you can see in the bottom left section that all the fields of accounts have already been loaded, and we can use those for filters. But before we do that, I want to add more data extensions into the mix, because remember, we want to combine opportunities, accounts, and contacts. So let's start with contacts. Now, to link this up, to join this with accounts, all I have to do is drag and drop it on top of accounts. And once I do that, again, I can provide an alias. But this time when I save, because we have dropped it on top of another DE, DESelect allows me to define the relationship between these two. It will vary on your own data model, of course, and you can use any kind of field that you want. But in my example, it would be there's a field called account ID on contacts that relates the contact to the account. So I'm using that one. And then in the middle, this is interesting. You can choose how you want to have the results. So you can, for instance, say, give me all the accounts, whether or not there are matching contacts, and do things like exclusions. These things are essentially the different kind of joins for those who are familiar with SQL and are listening to this. In my example, I simply want to have accounts with matching contacts. You can also see that the visual updates to make it a bit more clear. And I'm happy with this, so I'm going to save that. Let's keep going. Let's add opportunities to accounts. You can actually see I could drop it on contacts as well. If you have a data model where there's maybe, I know one customer that links up 16 DEs like this, and in different ways, perfectly possible. But in this example, we're going to keep it simple. We're just going to link opportunities to accounts. Once again, I can provide an alias. So let's do that. Save. And once more, I can define the relationship, but you've seen this, so we can do it a little bit faster. There we go. And save. So that was easy. Next, let's go to filters. Now here, I could go in a lot more detail, and I'd love to, but we're going to keep it short and sweet again. So one thing I want to filter on is the stage. So opportunity stage equals open. Now, I'm going to say that in this case, you can see I'm using a text input field, but it is actually possible to define pick lists in DESelect, which is one of those really little annoying things that you cannot do in Marketing Cloud. So we do allow you to define pick lists. But if you want to see more about that, you might want to check out the website or reach out to us. Let's add one more filter. Let's take account type. And in my database, it would be prospect. So those are the two filters I want to use. But as you can see, I'm already building a filter across data extensions. And we could go a lot more further here. And I'm going to show you that very quickly. For instance, for a date field like close date, the options are entirely different, which makes sense because you want to filter before or after a date. You can even do a relative date filter where you say, equals 5 days before now or something like that. On top of that, you can group as many filters as you like. There's no limit to this. One client that I have combines 60 of them in a very complex and or logic. Perfectly possible. You can change these things to and or. And then there's even more because if you want to go even a bit further, you could do things like do calculations. You could have a look at how many opportunities are linked to an account. What is the total value of an opportunity linked to an account? And do all these interesting segmentations essentially on commercial or transactional data. But I digress. Let's keep going with these filters. Next, let's go to the target definition. In the target definition, essentially what you could do is you could choose an existing data extension to write your result to. But most people who get DESelect quickly stop doing that because creating data extensions is a very time-consuming and boring job, and it's easy to make mistakes and you have to start over. So instead, people who get DESelect, they create DEs straight from within our interface. So let's do that. So I'm going to give it my target DE this name. I could choose a folder location, but I'm fine with this one. And I can say that I want to make the DE sendable and testable. I'm going to save that. Now we get this pane that we can fill up with fields from the source DEs that we chose earlier. And I could just drag and drop these fields one by one. What's awesome is that the moment I do that, you can see I can manipulate the metadata a little bit, but by default, the metadata in the target field will be copied from the source, ensuring that there's less mistakes in the way these things are processed by Marketing Cloud. So we do as much hand-holding and error handling as we can and give warnings to the users to make as little mistakes as possible. So I could do this, but instead of drag and dropping fields one by one, I could just do add all fields of this data extension. Accounts, let's do the same for contacts. Let's do the same for opportunities. Let's just take it all. And you can see that went really quickly. Now we have all the fields available. And I may proceed to do a little bit of cleanup because now account ID is still defined as primary key. I don't want that in my target. For those not familiar with primary key, it's essentially forces the values to be saved in that to be unique. So it might actually randomly deduplicate these records. Going a bit further, so the contact ID field, I'm happy to keep that a primary key actually, because I do want my contacts to be unique in this scenario, but I'm going to call this contact ID so it's more clear in the target where that came from. So as you can see, I can just rename that. Then here, this field, account ID, has been added twice because it exists on two different data extensions. So I'm going to throw that out. And same for this one. And let's also make sure opportunity ID is not a primary key. Lastly, Marketing Cloud has the concept of a send relationship where you should define which field is related to your subscriber key in your own Marketing Cloud data model. In our case, that will be contact ID, which is the case for many customers. So if I'm happy with that, I can just give that a save. And actually, what has happened now is that I can show you this. Let's go to Email Studio for a second. This data extension has already been created by DESelect in Marketing Cloud. So we'll go to data extensions, and there we go. Contacts with open opportunities. This is the one I just created, October 7th, that's today. If I click on it, just to show you the proof, you can see all the fields have been copied with the right metadata. Easy, huh? So I'm happy with this. Let's move to the preview. And here in preview, we can simply click run preview. And then as our penguin slides, what DESelect is actually doing in the background is that it's running a query. In fact, it's really running a query. The whole thing that we just built has produced a SQL query activity in Automation Studio, and it's executing that within Marketing Cloud. It will temporarily create another data extension where it will save the result, so it can show that here. So you have a quick idea of what you're doing. The data extension we created earlier won't be populated yet this way. The other advantage of us saving that query in Automation Studio is that you can add it to automations. While we wait, I'll quickly show you that. So I'm going to go to Automation Studio. And then here in Automation Studio, I navigate to Activities, SQL Query. And you can see there's a folder called DESelect here. That's not something I created. The app did it itself. And in it, all the queries that we create for selections are actually saved and can even be used for automations and so on. So meanwhile, good timing, our preview has rendered. So we just show you the first 20 records. So you have a quick idea of, did you use the right fields and so on. And also you can see how many records that this query has produced. So you got some quick feedback to see how everything's going. So that was some of our key features in a nutshell, but we've only scratched the surface here. I haven't gone into detail into subqueries, into sorting, into doing calculations and aggregations, into waterfall segmentation. There's things like deduplication and even something we call prio deduplication, which allows you to deduplicate based on a certain order and even with multiple rules. And just so much more. So if you want to learn more about our features, you can just go to deselect.io/features, or even better, reach out for a demo. Great, so now that we have covered the features, I also want to share with you some complementary services that we offer. So the thing is that we are a product company. We don't actually even sell services, but we are very focused on making sure that our customers are successful with our product and are using it to its full potential, essentially. And that's why we do this. So without any additional charge, again, I want to stress this, we'll do the installation of DESelect in your Marketing Cloud. That will be done by our support team. And that's a matter of 30 minutes. Doesn't take that long. From the moment you sign up for DESelect, you will also be assigned a dedicated customer success manager. This person will guide you through the onboarding, will be available for any kind of question related to your subscription. And this person will even reach out proactively to you, typically on a quarterly basis, to checking like, hey, how's it going? Can we help? This is where we listen for new feature requests. So it's something that our customers tend to value a lot. And then we also do, during the onboarding, a live and personalized onboarding training. This will typically be done by your CSM, so your customer success manager. It will be through a live and personalized webinar, because during this, we will train 5 of your key users and essentially cover all the features that you have access to. On top of that, you will get the training material in slide format, and you will even get some kind of training data. We can upload that into your Marketing Cloud so you can play around with different exercises that we provide to you. Also, during this training, we try to take the opportunity to co-create your first real selections that you can really use for your campaign. So the idea is that the moment you come out of this training, you're ready to go for your campaigns. Then on an ongoing basis, you can initiate support tickets in case you need help with anything or you have some kind of unexpected result. You can do this through our support portal. And let me show you that very quickly. So on our support portal, you can submit requests, but obviously you will also find very extensive documentation. So that's the support portal, but you can actually even do support tickets even via email. So it's really easy. Response time is within 1 working day. Now, as you onboard, you even get an additional layer of support, which we call hypercare. And hypercare means that during your first month, your CSM will be available on an ad hoc basis via webinar, for instance, to co-create additional selections. So this is essentially some kind of free consulting you get, where we make sure that you can actually do this, the scenarios, the segmentation scenarios using DESelect, for which you got the product in the first place, right? And then, as I already mentioned, there's extensive documentation on the support portal, but also training material. So the exercises are made available there as well. You can use the demo data, the training data that we provide to you to do them. And also these exercises are actually recorded. You can find them on our YouTube channel as well. So now that you've seen all of that, you have a good idea of our features, the benefits you will get, as well as the complementary services. We're going to get to the offer that we can make to you. And I want to highlight the value that you would actually get by having this kind of solution. It will depend a bit on your processes, on your data model, the size of your team and all that. But essentially, this holds true for most customers. First, starting with just the drag and drop segmentation itself, as explained, we know this saves about 50% of the time that customers typically spend on data. So this will depend on your team size and your processes, but the value of that is between 30K and 300K per year. Now, that sounds like an impressive number, so I'm going to jump in there so you can see how we calculate that. This is a publicly available spreadsheet, and we actually use it ourselves. When we are talking with a prospect, we'll always aim to build a business case for them to demonstrate the added value DESelect can bring, and later evaluate if we have been able to deliver upon that. So there's a few scenarios here depending on the size of your team, but for instance, let's look at this one, large corporate. The way the spreadsheet is put together is that there's a list of your resources. There's an estimate of how much time they currently spend on data. Again, data ranging from an actual query to talking with someone and briefing them on how to do it. So you have to take all of that into consideration. On average, it's 40%, but you can tweak these numbers to your own situation. And then there's the average cost of an FTE. So this depends very strongly on the region where you're active, the seniority of your resources, and you also have to keep an account for taxes, because that's the actual cost for the company. And so if you multiply these numbers, you get an idea of how much money you're spending on resources to manage data on an annual basis. And so now you can see how much efficiency you're going to get. So this is just a valuation of the efficiency gain that you can get, because we know, again, we can halve that time spent on data. And so in the end, you get a number, which in this case is 150K a year. And that's a high number, but it's a very realistic number. It's a very recurring number that we see at clients, between this range of maybe starting at 30K a year up to 300 or more sometimes for enterprise customers. So I'm going to jump back to the slide. The second thing is the plug and play aspect of it. So here, if you would opt for an audience management solution, you can easily spend 100K just for the implementation, not counting maybe additional advisory services, not counting the time your own people spend. So this is actually very much underestimated what the actual cost is of doing this. But we offer a plug and play, so you can skip the whole implementation thing as mentioned earlier. So there you go. Onboarding and training, I explained this. So it's complimentary, but the value of it is about $1,000. Just because it's a live training that's prepared, it's customized, it's followed up on, and then all in the very wide sense of word, the different kinds of support you can get, including that hypercare support that I mentioned, which is basically just ad hoc free consulting you get, and your dedicated customer success manager. We estimate the value of that at about 6K per year. So the total value that you can get out of a solution like DESelect is just for the startup over 100K, and for the recurring value year by year between 36 and 306K. So, but don't be afraid. This is a valuation. This is the value that you can get. This is not how much we charge. In fact, we only charge a fraction of this amount. And I mentioned earlier, we always try to establish a business case for our customers, and we try to aim for a multiple between 3 and 5 of the return of investment that you get on DESelect. So that gives you an idea of our price points. Talking about pricing, just to give you an idea of our pricing model, our annual subscription is based on 3 parameters to optimally scale with the value that we can bring. So the first one is the edition. You can just check that out for yourself online. It's DESelect.io/pricing, where you can find different editions, the prices, a high-level description of the features. This is the most important criteria because this is dependent on your business requirements. Secondly, also the number of business units in which you want to use DESelect, because we'll have to set up separate connections for that. That's an important consideration. And of course, the number of users that will be using DESelect. Now, to know exactly what the price will be for you and to learn more about the benefits and the value we can bring to you, please reach out by requesting a demo. To do this, just go to DESelect.io/demo, where you can fill in a form and even directly book a demo meeting with us. This will allow us to gauge and analyze what kind of package is most suited to your needs and make an offer based on that. What if you want to try out DESelect? So we do get that question a lot. We understand that you may want to try it out before submitting to an annual subscription. So that's why we offer the possibility. That is why we offer the possibility to opt for a paid pilot. Essentially, you can start an annual subscription, but you only pay for the first 30 days. And while you do this, you still get all the complementary services. So you get all the benefits of an annual subscription, but you initially only pay for 30 days. If during those 30 days, for some reason, you feel we don't bring the value that you were expecting or it doesn't match your requirements, you can simply cancel that subscription for any reason. And if you don't cancel, great, that's what we aim for, then the pilot will automatically extend into the actual annual subscription. And at that point, you will be charged for the remaining 11 months of that first annual subscription. So all in all, this is a very inexpensive, low-risk way for you to find out if DESelect is a good fit for your organization or not. So let's just sum up that whole offer. With DESelect, you get intuitive drag-and-drop segmentation available within your Marketing Cloud. It will be fully integrated with your Marketing Cloud data and have all the data available even going forward. We do the installation for you. So to get started, you don't need to lift a finger. You'll get a dedicated customer success manager who makes sure your onboarding goes well, who checks in with you regularly to see if there's feature requests or if they can offer solutions. There's a live onboarding training with training materials and even training data. And there's plenty of video tutorials after that. So even if you continue to onboard new people on DESelect afterwards, that material will be available. I even forgot to mention that even your live onboarding training is actually recorded. So all the questions captured therein will be available to new members in your team over time. You'll be able to get very, very extensive support through our portal, login cases, which can even be done via email, and of course the hypercare support, which is the first month when your CSM is available for you if you just want to do a certain segmentation scenario in DESelect, but you're not quite sure how to do that. And on top of that, there's an option to do a 30-day paid pilot, so a very low-risk way to just try it out and see if it works. If this sounds interesting to you and you want to learn more again, simply request a demo. Go to DESelect.io/demo, fill in the form, and we'll reach out to you. And this will also allow us to make you a quote.